Now, on this Thursday evening, here's Shan with a look at all today's top stories in 5 News at 5.
On 5 News, honouring the innocents. A minute's silence for the children, parents and families destroyed by the Manchester terror attack. Also, the Queen visits the injured. She condemns the bombing as wicked as she speaks to young survivors, like Millie Robson, who'd won a competition for the concert that ended in carnage.
Like a few holes in my legs and stuff, and then I have a bit of a cut on my eye, and then just a bit of a bit there. But compared to other people, I'm quite lucky, really.
And as the investigation continues, police say they've made significant arrests. Hello and welcome to 5 News. I'm Sian Williams. It was another day of extraordinary emotion in Manchester today. The people stood together in silence at 11 o'clock this morning to remember those killed and injured in Monday's bomb attack, a silence shared across the UK. Later, the Queen visited the city's children's hospital to talk at length to young survivors on the wards and thank staff for their hard work. More on that shortly. First, though, to a moment of poignancy, pain and song. Our chief correspondent, Tessa Chapman, reports.
As the bells chimed, they stood as one, stood in silence. A minute to remember the people whose lives were lost or changed forever. The Manchester police officers who have worked night and day since the attack paused. And the rest of the country mourns too, at landmarks in London and in towns and cities from the south coast to Scotland. They bowed their heads and paid their respects. And then, back in Manchester, the quiet turned to noise.
They are clapping, yes, but with hearts full of sadness. This is the people of Manchester saying we are defiant, we will not be broken, but we're hurting too.
Thousands looked to the sky, another fitting tribute.
It's everything. It's everything. Just to show our respects and our love. I can't talk. Sorry.
I mean, it's just heartbreaking to think that, you know, all these families now are missing their grandchildren and mothers. Yes, it's just dreadful.
These are the faces of the children, the women, the men who were in their thoughts. 17-year-old Chloe Rutherford loved to sing, a talented musician. She and her boyfriend Liam Curry were inseparable. In a joint statement, their families said they were perfect in every way for each other and were meant to be. They wanted to be together forever, and now they are. Ailey MacLeod had travelled 400 miles from the Outer Hebrides in Scotland for the concert. Her parents described the 14-year-old as vivacious and full of fun, adding she loved all music, whether it was listening to Ariana or playing the bagpipes with her pipe band. Another teenager, Sorrel Lachowski, also died in the explosion. Her grandfather said Sorrel was only 14, but she was our rock. She kept us all grounded. She was such a clever, talented, creative girl. There was nothing she couldn't do. Michelle Kiss was at the concert with her daughter. Here's the teenager being comforted by police after the blast which killed her mum. The family summed up their grief. We are all obviously devastated by her loss. She's been taken away from us and all that love her in the most traumatic way imaginable. Elaine McKeever was an officer with Cheshire Police. Her family said she was everyone's friend, thoughtful beyond belief, with an effervescent and outgoing personality. Despite what has happened to her, she would want us all to carry on regardless and not be frightened by fear tactics. And Courtney Boyle's mum, who lost not only her daughter but her boyfriend Philip Tron, said, "My stunning, amazing, beautiful daughter, you were my rock. You made me so proud with all you had achieved. And my gorgeous, crazy Philip, you made my world a happy place. And now you are both my angels, flying high in the sky."
Her soul slides away, but don't look back in anger, I heard you say.
It seemed right that Manchester's moment of reflection ended in a song, a lone voice from the crowd, before others joined in.
Manchester is my home, and what happened on Monday was just absolutely devastating. And I really wanted to join together. I didn't want to be in the house on my own on my day off, so I thought I'd come down and join together with all the people of Manchester.
I've got 4 daughters, you know, and it's just heartbreaking. Just heartbreaking. We want to come down, pay my respect. I don't think this sort of stuff should happen.
We've just all been so upset, you know, since Monday, since it's happened. Stupid, senseless bombing, you know, innocent people just going out for, you know, to the concert and not coming back. It's it, Manchester's so hard. But then again, it's pulled it all together.
We love Manchester!
There is pain in this city, but so much love too. They showed it today. Tessa Chapman, 5 News, Manchester.
Well, the Queen condemned the Manchester terror attack as dreadful and wicked on her visit to the Children's Hospital today. There she stood by the bedside of those who'd been caught up in the bombing, chatting to survivors. She also thanked emergency staff for their efforts in looking after the injured, as Peter Lane reports.
Resting, recovering in hospital, young survivors of the blast, teddy bears at their side. And then for these girls, a very special visitor.
Good morning.
The Queen, here to offer words of comfort to children like 15-year-old Millie.
So, Millie, your legs got hurt, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's your legs, isn't it?
And to focus the girls' minds on what they'd been enjoying.
You had enjoyed the concert, presumably?
Yeah, it was really good.
Was it?
Yeah. I got to meet her before the concert as well. She was lovely.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, she'd won a competition, hadn't you?
Yeah.
Her and a friend to meet her backstage.
Oh, I see.
So you'd seen her backstage first, hadn't you? So, yeah.
That's a very good thing to be able to do, isn't it? Yes.
Very brave, and everybody's been fantastic. You can't thank them enough. The hospital's been amazing.
Interesting. Very alarming.
Yeah, and I feel very lucky.
Afterwards, Millie explained how she and her dad dealt with her injuries.
We tied like jumpers and stuff like around the 2 like main wounds in my leg, and then he just picked me up, and then we just like ran outside.
Just tied her to try and stop the blood, and I just picked her up and I just said, just look at me, just don't look anywhere else, look at me, because it was just, obviously you can imagine carnage.
Evie Mills got her concert tickets for her birthday. The Queen soon got an idea of how popular Ariana Grande is.
Yeah, she sounds very, very good. Very good singer.
Then, in a rare public moment of candour, she expressed her feelings about the attack.
Well,
very scary.
Thing. Very wicked.
Mm.
And, to target that sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, it's awful, really. Awful, but hopefully they'll mend.
Yes.
We'll get better.
But it's very interesting how everybody has united, haven't they? Yeah.
It's been amazing, really.
And then a moment to reflect on those not so fortunate, as Ruth Murrell explained to the Queen that one of the women she'd been standing with was killed.
And my daughter's friend's mum, she died. She was one of the ones that she died in the blast.
Yeah.
This royal visit can't erase what people have been through or lost, but for young minds struggling to cope, it was a brief distraction at the start of a long healing process. Peter Lane, 5 News.
Well, let's go back now to our chief correspondent, Tessa Chapman, who's at Manchester Arena for us. Tessa, we were seeing there some of those who are wounded in the blast. What about the rest of those who are injured? How are they?
Well, we know that there are 32 patients who are still in hospital. 5 adults and 5 children are still under what's called critical care, and we understand that some of those have undergone surgery today. They may expect to be in hospital for quite some time. They, and of course the families of those who died, are going to need support in the weeks and months and even the years to come. And to that end, another great example of the Manchester spirit. A fund has been set up called the I Love Manchester Emergency Fund. In a matter of days, people have donated more than £4 million.
Tessa, thank you. Meanwhile, the investigation into the terrorist network behind the attack continues apace. 8 men have been detained, with police calling their arrests significant. They also say items seized in raids are very important. Julian Drucker reports.
Police are pursuing a network, and so the race continues to find those connected to the Manchester bomber. At this house in Withington, close to the city centre, a man was arrested after an early morning raid and controlled explosion. He is the 8th person now being held for questioning in this exhaustive inquiry.
I want to reassure people that the arrests that we have made are significant, and initial searches of premises have revealed items that we believe are very important to the investigation.
These are heightened times. Armed police in a bomb disposal unit raced to the Hume area after a suspicious package was found near a school. After an hour or so of frenetic activity, the item was found to be harmless. But police are also probing the Libya connection in this investigation. In detention in Tripoli, Hashim Abidi, brother of the bomber, seen here after his arrest. Libyan militia forces claim the 20-year-old has confessed to being a member of the so-called Islamic State group. Their father, Ramadan, is also being questioned in Libya. And today, via German intelligence, we learnt his now late and depraved son Salman was in Dusseldorf just 4 days before the attack. We were also told a number of people in the UK contacted the authorities over his increasingly radical opinions.
We know a community activists who come across Salman Abedi expressing views which were extremist, were endorsing suicide bombings, supporting so-called IS in Syria and Iraq, and he reported that to the counter-terrorism hotline. But there's a serious question mark about who knew what and what happened to that information.
Terrorism somehow penetrated the Manchester Arena. But today a Whitehall source revealed 18 other British plots have been foiled since 2013, 5 of them since the Westminster attack in March. As police learn more of Monday's outrage, they hope to urgently foil another.
Let's talk to Julian now. He's at the Greater Manchester Police headquarters. Julian, police are very angry about the intelligence which seems to have been leaked and somehow been put on US media. What more can you tell us about that?
Yes, it was the New York Times which published photos from the scene of the attack, presumably leaked by someone in US law enforcement or perhaps the White House. Greater Manchester Police completely furious about this. They've vowed not to share information with the US again. That is a huge move. The Prime Minister and the Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, have both condemned the leaks. And Donald Trump in the last few hours or so has said that the leaks are deeply troubling, a grave threat to national security. He has vowed to find the person or persons who breached that intelligence.
Julian, thank you. Coming up on 5 News. UKIP launches its election manifesto and says Theresa May must share some responsibility for the Manchester attack. And lifting a city, Man United stars reflect on their Europa League victory. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back. You're watching 5 News. The terror attack had put election campaigning on hold this week, with most parties resuming tomorrow, except UKIP, which decided to launch its manifesto today. Its leader, Paul Nuttall, described the decision as a message to terrorists that they will not win. But it's the party's deputy chair who was the focus of attention today, after her comments that the Prime Minister bore some responsibility for what had happened in Manchester. Our political editor, Andy Bell, reports.
This was always going to be a manifesto launch in the shadow of what happened in Manchester, and the UKIP party leader chose to focus on what he called radical Islam and the country's response.
It is not the British way to turn a blind eye to evil in our midst. It is not good enough to light candles and proclaim that extremists will not beat us. Action is required on multiple fronts, and I am proud UKIP is setting out its patriotic agenda for defending our country and our way of life.
When journalists asked if he was exploiting Monday's tragedy, some UKIP supporters objected.
Thanks, Liberals.
Then the person who wrote the manifesto appeared to say Theresa May was partially responsible for Monday's attack.
I think she must bear some responsibility. All politicians who voted against measures or voted for measures to make cuts bear some responsibility.
Before clarifying.
I didn't say she must bear, no, I didn't say what she must bear responsibility for. The only person who is responsible for, or people who is responsible for what happened in Manchester are the terrorists.
This was all interrupted by the minute's silence. UKIP's been criticising for restarting their campaign even before this chance to pay tribute. When I spoke to Paul Nuttall, I asked him about Manchester.
Paul Nuttall, do you think the government's failed on security?
Yes, I do actually. I think the fact that they've reduced the amount that the security services get, I think the fact that they've reduced the number of police officers to the tune of 20,000 since 2009, I think the fact that they've reduced our armed forces certainly doesn't help.
But if that's a failure of government, Theresa May's the Prime Minister, she was previously Home Secretary, is she part of the problem?
The politicians who voted in favour of the measures which reduced our security services and reduced our armed forces and reduced our police officers should well have a rethink.
Security is always a subject for discussion in any election. Right now, it's the only subject.
Let's speak to Andy in Westminster now. So, Andy, Paul Nuttall says the party has a patriotic agenda. What is it?
Well, they say that by cancelling the HS2 high-speed rail link, by drastically cutting back overseas aid, they can find the money for 20,000 extra police, 20,000 extra troops and 4,000 extra border guards. And also they say that anybody who goes to Syria or Iraq to help so-called Islamic State would never be allowed back in the country and would lose their British citizenship. Now, talk to people from UKIP and they say they are used, in their words, to being ahead of the curve, whether it's on Europe or in immigration. And they believe that what they are saying now on security, others will soon be saying too.
Andy, thank you. Other news, and for the first time in nearly 3 years, net migration in the UK has fallen to below 250,000. The figure, which is the difference between the number of people arriving and leaving, has been affected by a dramatic plunge in the number of people coming from Eastern and Central Europe, as well as a surge in those returning home. And the parents of Charlie Gard, who suffers from a rare genetic condition, have lost their legal battle in the Court of Appeal. Chris Gard and Connie Yates wanted to take the 9-month-old to America for a therapy trial, but today judges upheld the High Court ruling which allows doctors to stop his life support treatment. Manchester United have dedicated their Europa League win over Ajax last night to the victims of the Manchester attack, saying, "We won it for Manchester." And in a week that has seen people come together, the city's rival football clubs did too, joining forces to pledge £1 million towards an emergency fund set up to support those affected, as Ruth Liptrot reports.
A minute's silence from the players at the beginning of the game for the victims of Monday's attack. The result was a 2-0 victory for United, but it was one that was bittersweet. Paul Pogba was one of the game's goal scorers.
We play for England, we play for Manchester, and we play for them, for the people who died.
His thoughts were echoed by manager Jose Mourinho.
If we could
would change.
And that's it tonight. I'm going to be back at 6:30 with 5 News tonight, when we're going to be hearing the story of a nurse who treated some of the most seriously injured patients on Monday night. We'll also be getting the very latest in the investigation into the attack. Let's get the weather though now. I'll see you again at 6:30. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.